Man, I was told today was the first day of practice for track. Dude, I've been getting prepped. My friend, he told me if I take these things here and I go walk around with them, this is going to make me a fast runner. He said when I do that 100, these are the weight of a baton. And I can tell you, I feel tired already. Man. But he's what he said. He said, you got to wear the muck boots. You got to wear the backpack. Got to have the 35 pounds, not the 25, the 35. Said the helmet, it's going to be real beneficial for you. The arm weights, the little blue ones I got on here, yep, that preps me too for it. Man, I feel ready for a run. Do I look ready? You know what? All right, I'll take the weights. Oh, yeah. All right. I'll just toss those over here. One second. Okay. Perfect. Now I'm ready. I'm ready.
Take off the helmet, take off the bag, just take everything off.
But that's not what my friend said. My friend didn't say that. But I'll trust you guys. I'll take it off that. All right. Now I'm ready.
Arm weights! Take off the arm weights!
The back. Okay. Fine. I'll take the backpack. Okay. Dude, I'm so ready for this 100. The arm weights? This is not what my friend said to me to do. Fine. Man, you guys. I don't know if I trust you. All right. Whew. I am ready now, right? Yeah, fine. All right. Whew. Okay. Now am I ready? I think I feel ready. Oh, okay. Hold on one second. Put that on. Gotta get those Nikes on. This is what I was told, right? Gotta throw the Nikes on. This is your moment to see if I ever learned how to tie my shoes. Okay. All right. Just one shoe or two? What do I need? Both? Okay. All right. I guess I'll put two shoes on. All right. Whew. Now am I ready?
Yes!
Okay. That's true. I need to turn it on back right. There we go. More aerodynamic that way. All right. So, if you haven't noticed, we are jumping into a new series tonight called My 180. And I do that whole illustration in a funny way because I want to get a point across to you tonight. And one thing that I feel like we need to understand tonight is the fact that often we can walk through life carrying a lot of baggage and a lot of weight as we try to walk towards Christ. So what I want us tonight to understand is that there is a major truth that we're going to talk about, and it is that we are to cast off our weight and run in freedom. I actually forgot in all my hurry, my clicker.
Come on, Brad.
I know, right? So if there's anything you're going to take away from tonight, it is this. Cast off your weight and run in freedom. Okay, and the way that we're going to do that tonight is we're going to take a look at Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 4. That's going to be page 755 in your guys' Bibles that you have. Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 4. And so tonight what we're going to do is, this is our overarching theme, cast off your weight and run in freedom. And we're going to take it verse by verse, part by part, and start looking at what that truly means for us. Because here's the thing. We have walked through this whole year, and you guys have been hearing how we're talking about the wanderer, and that's been our big theme. And then this idea that maybe you guys walked into Amplify at the beginning of this year and you said, I don't know where I am at with God. But as you've been going through, what I keep hearing you guys say is, okay, I understand that I want to live for God. But what do I do with it now? Where do I go? How do I start living that out actually in my life? Now what? And so I wanted to take a pause. I wanted to take the next 3 weeks of us going, okay, my 180, what do I do with my life? Have you ever watched a snowboarder? Have you watched the half pipe in the Olympics just recently? Okay, they do a whole bunch of spins, right? And they get a certain amount of points for the different types of tricks that they do. And one of them is the 180. It's a pretty simple move, but it's just the boarder going one direction, and he flips around and he goes the opposite, okay? 180, 180 degrees. And yet, in our own lives, sometimes we need to do a 180. Maybe we have been walking away from God, and we need to turn around and then take our first steps back towards him. And how do we do that? And so now we're going to dive into that for the next 3 weeks. But the very first part of that, the next step that you can take, if you've gotten to that point where you're saying, God, I want to live for you, but I don't know how, then this is your truth, to cast off your weight and to run in freedom. And so let's do that. Let's look at the very first part of Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1, and it says this, first word, therefore. Pause. Here's the thing. We need to understand what the meaning of therefore is. Why is this writer here, which it's not clearly known exactly who wrote this, but we're just going to say the author, okay? So the author here is writing therefore for a reason. Because if you take a look back at chapter 11, he lists out great examples of faith. People who lived lives that were passionate for Jesus. And so he lists person after person after person of those who lived for Christ. These are known as the Great Hall of Faith. I'm going to call it the Hall of Faithers, okay? It's not a word, but we're going to use it. And here, now in chapter 12, he begins with therefore because he's helping us to look back. He says, therefore, live lives like these Hall of Faithers in chapter 11. And then he continues on and he goes, since we are surrounded by such a great crowd of witnesses to the life of faith. See, this writer understands that there have been those who have walked through life, and now we, the people that are following them, have great examples to look towards of those who have taken their 180s. People who have turned their lives around and started to follow for Jesus and taken steps in growing in their understanding of who God is. So that's it. We're surrounded by these great cloud of witnesses, but then he steps into the next part. And he says, let us do something. Let us strip off every weight that slows us down. This is an action point, just like you saw me. Was I going to be very fast carrying those 35-pound weights with the backpack and the muck boots and the helmet and all that? Was I going to be the fastest 100? Was I going to beat Usain Bolt? Yeah, no. No, I wasn't. Because I had every piece of article of heaviest things I could put on me in that moment. I wasn't going to be fast. I was going to be really slow. I was going to be probably dead last in my race. And yet, here in this passage of Hebrews chapter 12, it says, let us strip off every weight that slows us down. I took off all the different articles of clothing that you guys told me so that I could become the fastest. So that I could all of a sudden be able to win that race if I really tried. Because I took off the stuff that was holding me back. And that, for us, is our action point tonight. That's the start of your 180-degree life. It's the moment where you begin to turn your life for God and you're able to release the things that slow you down from living your life for God, that are holding you back. So we need to clear the way. And that's the starting point for living a life for God. So strip off everything. But then the writer uses a word that I highlighted this week, and it said especially. Because he's about to show us not only are you supposed to strip off everything, but there's something that is especially important for you to strip off. And it says especially the sin that so easily trips us up. And then let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us. You want to know the number one deterrent for living for God? Sin in your life. Sin is the number one deterrent from you being able to turn around and live for God. It's the biggest stumbling block that you're going to walk through. And so here, the writer understands this, and he's beginning to say, strip off everything. Things that even maybe don't seem that bad, but especially make sure you tear out the things of sin in your life to live fully for God. You do this by casting off your weight and running in freedom. But then we hit verse 2. Verse 2 goes like this. We do this, okay? So we strip it off, but Brad, how do we do that? How do we do this? Verse 2 says, we do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus. We fix our eyes on him. You know, I'll tell you, when I've run races before, the biggest motivation for finishing is looking at the finish line. That actually looking up ahead and going, it's right there, I can make it. That's one of the biggest motivators to getting there. There's so many times as a coach where all of a sudden my athletes will be running up a hill and the finish line's right up at the top and their face is smack dab in the pavement. And I say, get your eyes up, look at the top of the hill, it's right there. Because that's a motivator for getting them to the finish line. And so, we are to keep our eyes on Jesus. And then, there's an important thing that it shows us. Not only do we keep our eyes on Jesus, but then it says, who is Jesus? He's the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. You know what the reality is? This race of life that the writer talks about has already actually been won. That actually Jesus has already claimed first place in life. And then if we are actually able to turn towards him and say, you know what, I want to live for you, you get to be a part of that championship win. You get to be a part of living out that glory of the win. That actually, when you're running your race, you already know the end result of your race. And yet, the reality is, even though we get that prize, Jesus didn't walk through life experiencing no pain. That actually, Jesus walked through life and had to endure extreme pain in order to win that prize. Why do I say that? Because then it goes on and it says, because of the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross, disregarding its shame, and now he is seated in the place of honor beside God's throne. See, Jesus went through the worst of it in order to experience the reward. And yet he still looked forward. He looked ahead. He knew what was waiting him. And Jesus looked beyond his current state of shame, scorn, torture, and he was able to look towards the future reward that was awaiting him. You know, if you're here tonight and you're like, okay, I want to be all bought in for God, then I want you to understand one important thing tonight, and that is that we are not alone in our pain in the journey or in the race of life. And then we too can also look towards the future with hope if we placed our trust in God. Your pain is not without reason. So cast off your weight and run in freedom. Verse 3 and 4 starts off by saying this. Think of all the hostility he endured from the sinful people. So right here, the very first word, think. Slow down. Be reminded. This is a moment where the writer is wanting you to be reminded of all the things that Jesus has experienced, so then you can be able to walk forward and your life, in your journey, in your 180. You know, and I was thinking about this week, and it's just mind-blowing when I think of what Jesus has done. Because Jesus experienced pain which he didn't deserve. He didn't. He literally was in the place of all power and authority, and yet he stepped down into the form of man and lived a life that was not that of a king, and yet he did that in order to gain a reward of buying all of us back, of being able to set all of us free. And you know what's crazy about that? Because when you look at that and you think through the picture of that, it's like Jesus running the race, crushing everyone in the race, coming to the podium, standing up on first place, and then says, no. Looks at the last place person and tells him to come up onto that podium in first place, takes his medal off and puts it on that person and says they are the champion. Mind-blowing. That's what Jesus does for every one of us. We don't deserve it. We don't deserve the first place medal. We don't deserve the championship, but yet that's what Jesus did. He put himself in the lowest places in order for us to be placed in the highest. He exchanged being the king to being the criminal. And so we need to think of all the hostility that he endured from sinful people. And then it ends with this, then you won't become weary and give up. You won't give up, and you'll fight till your last breath. See, when we're able to be reminded of what Jesus has endured, what he's gone through, then everything in life, we can be able to look towards the future and know that we have enough in us to make it to the end. Because, as he says here to close, after all, you have not yet given your lives in your struggle against sin. See, at this point, the believers here right now have not yet had their lives taken from them. That they haven't actually believed in God to the point where people said, you know what, we're going to kill you for what you believe. And so they're reading this right now because they're alive still. And you all are sitting here tonight in this room hearing the same words. And so you must be believing in God, or maybe you don't. But you're at a point where you haven't been killed for your faith. So keep on running. Keep on running. Fight the good fight. Finish well. Finish strong. Cast off your weight and run in freedom. Lay aside all the things that are weighing you down and start walking in faith. Trusting that God has a great plan for your life, even if it comes with sometimes pain. See, the best ways to live out the race that God has called us to is actually already pointed out right here. That actually, first, it's to gaze on Jesus. If you want your life to be 180, to turn away from the things of this world and to start living for Jesus, you need to start gazing on the face of Jesus. You need to start looking at him as the person who you're striving to be like, because the more you gaze into the face of who Jesus is, the more you start to look like Jesus to the world. And then not only that, but then to be reminded that Jesus empathizes with your pain. He doesn't sympathize only with your pain, which means that he could say, hey, I'm really sorry that you're feeling that, but he's never walked through it. No, Jesus empathizes with your pain because he has walked through what you've walked through. He's been in your shoes and he knows what it feels like, no matter the pain. And you know what I love about that? It's like a coach. A coach, a very good coach, is one who's actually done the sport that he's coaching or she's coaching. Why do I say that? Because that coach has experienced the pain and the hardship of the sport that you're in. And so when they say, keep going, one more spike, hey, you can go 1 or 2 seconds faster, change that form, it's because they've heard those very same words yelled at them out on the courts, out on the track, out on the field. Because they know what it feels like to be in your shoes. That's a good coach. And yet, that is exactly who Jesus is. He's the best coach, the best champion of your life. Not only has he been on the top where he's won it all, but then he's also walked in the very shoes that you've done. He's done the very same sport of the very same race that you've done. And so therefore, he can be able to say, keep on going, keep on running, don't lose, don't quit on me. Because he's done the exact same thing that you have, and he finished strong. Guys, tonight, cast off your weight and run in freedom. Gaze on the face of Jesus, and then be reminded that Jesus empathizes with your pain, and then take the next step forward. And sometimes it's hard because you want specifics of like, well, what do I exactly do in my own life? Sometimes it's just, you got to trust, you got to look forward, and you got to take one step forward into your day. So here's what I'm going to do. Tonight's message was super short, and I wanted it that way. Because I feel like we just came off of a really cool time at Freeze Out. Things where, honestly, we had probably 65-70% of Amplify at Freeze Out. But there's also those of you who haven't been a part of what we experienced. And so what I want to do tonight is I want to leave space. I want to leave time open to hear from you guys. That I want you guys to share the ways that God actually started to work on this 180 for you. Because I know from hearing from each one of you specifically at Freeze Out, that you started to feel God tugging on your heart saying, hey, I want you to start turning towards me more. I want you to start walking in faith towards me. And so I'm going to challenge you guys that went on Freeze Out. I'm going to open it up in just a minute. We're going to bring up the first person that I've already asked in advance. But I want you guys to share how God worked in your heart, and then we'll go from there. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for just how you offer up the option for us to be able to turn our lives towards you, to live a life for you, to run an incredible race with highs, with lows. God, I thank you for the fact that you are already the champion, and that when we come to know who you are, is we're actually brought into that championship with you. God, I thank you for the love that you have given us, even though you went through so much pain to offer it. And God, I ask that coming off of Freeze Out now and hearing just the different testimonies from all of these students of how, God, you've been working in their lives, I ask that we would go forward now in a new way, in a fresh way. That it wouldn't be just a spiritual high from a weekend, but that it would be a living for you day to day and shining you to the world around each one of us. So God, I thank you for how powerful, God, you are, how you hear us in prayer, and I ask that we would continue to take that one step forward in walking in our faith with you, taking our 180. And so we pray this in your Son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen.